Great question. There's a number of points I'd like to make on that. One is, if you've never used a liberating structure, take Henry and Keith's advice and start with some of the ones that perhaps are not as much of a risk for both facilitators and learners. And the two examples that quickly come to mind for me are impromptu networking. So I've used impromptu networking, for instance, in my introduction as program head to the program. So welcoming learners to campus, giving them an overview of what they can expect within the program, but also building in time for them actually having a break within that overview and asking learners to engage with each other, to be able to introduce yourself to someone you haven't met before and talk about what brought you here to this particular program. Of course, we've been using these kinds of strategies for a long time, and some faculty members use these very naturally. But sometimes when we get into that mode of, I have all this information I need to share with our learners, and it becomes just an information dump. And what I really appreciate about it is building in something like impromptu networking into that program overview, is it really sends the message that we're all working together, and that there are going to be lots of opportunities within the residency and within the program for the sort of mutual meaning making and engagement between both learners and faculty. Impromptu networking, 1, 2 for all are great activities to start with. Also, from a participant's perspective, if you're so used to traditional meeting arrangements, then doing something like 25-10 crowdsourcing or whatever, it's going to seem very different. So being able to help to scaffold your liberating structures. So you start with ones like impromptu networking or 1, 2 for all that aren't as much of a stretch. I think helps build people's confidence and also willingness to do things differently than potentially they've done them in the past. Another piece of advice for facilitators is I'm a really big proponent of sort of visualization. So thinking through in advance the process of using a liberating structure. And that's where Henry and Keith's book, I think, is really helpful, because they give you clear instructions. They provide some tips and traps for you to be mindful of. And so I've used that as a strategy of really sort of sitting down and saying, okay, first of all, what is the point of using this activity? And it's got to be purposeful. Number 2, what kind of reactions can I expect from learners, and how might I address and support the different kinds of reactions? But thirdly, how am I going to introduce this activity? How am I going to support participants' involvement without this being all about me as a facilitator? Because the great thing about liberating structures is it really enables a facilitator to set up some key aspects of the structure and then slightly move to the side and enable the great things to happen, but still being mindful of the opportunities for coaching. So that's a key for me, is being able to figure out in advance what kinds of facilitation and coaching strategies I may need to use. And then lastly is also, how do I wrap this up? How do, as a facilitator, thinking in advance, again, what kind of debriefing process will this lead to? What kinds of questions will we explore about the use of liberating structures? So, I found that, thinking about those things in advance and then reflecting on your experience in using it also is obviously a really key part of it.